Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
The Federal Emergency Management Agency is hiring again. With Atlantic hurricane season officially underway, FEMA is trying to fill hundreds of open positions. But that comes after the agency lost roughly 5,000 employees since last January. For the latest, Federal News Network's Justin Doubleday joins me now. Justin, great to have you.
Good to be with you, Terry.
All right. What are the details on this FEMA hiring plan?
Yeah, the FEMA hiring freeze is over, and the agency is staffing up for the first time for almost 18 months. FEMA announced the hiring plans during an all-hands meeting with staff a couple weeks ago. Senior leaders announced that they were going to make about 300 new hires in the near term. Officials are also working with Department of Homeland Security leadership to fill up to 700 vacancies under a broader staffing plan. And so the agency has posted some jobs on USA Jobs. These are positions in areas like emergency management, human resources, contracting, public affairs. And so FEMA, after losing, as you mentioned, 5,000 employees since the start of the second Trump administration, is going the other way for the first time in a while.
From what you just described, these are positions that headquarters, maybe back office sorts of business operations?
These are both headquarters positions and in the regional areas that FEMA operates across the country. These would be positions, yes, back office, as well as disaster support positions as well.
So how do these fit into what FEMA's new leaders are saying about their plans for the agency?
Yeah, FEMA leaders are once again stressing to the agency that they are going to be ready for a potentially busy disaster season. This time, though, they're really emphasizing the workforce aspect of things. Robert Fenton Jr. is now the senior official performing the duties of the FEMA administrator. He's normally in charge of FEMA Region 9 out in the West Coast, but he is now the fourth interim FEMA leader since the start of the second Trump administration. During that all-hands call, he said that supporting the workforce, would be his top priority. This, of course, comes after not just a number of thousands of departures, but also just general uncertainty around the future of FEMA for the workforce who's stuck through these past 18 or so months. And so you heard during that all-hands meeting, new FEMA leaders, really trying to emphasize that they will support the agency's workforce. Cameron Hamilton, who is President Trump's pick to be the permanent FEMA administrator, also addressed staff during that all-hands meeting and said that, he is with them. He's honored to serve them. And so you're really hearing this emphasis to the broader FEMA workforce from this leadership team that they want to support them going forward.
Well, speaking of senior leaders, this will be Homeland Security Secretary Mullen's first hurricane season in the seat there at DHS. How are these changes fitting in with what he said his goal is for FEMA?
Yeah, you've really seen him focus on stabilizing FEMA a little bit, and that comes after former Homeland Security Secretary Christine Noem really almost had a target on FEMA as far as cutting FEMA, shifting more responsibilities to state and local governments. That, of course, is the recommendation of the FEMA Review Council that the Trump administration pulled together. But even before the council finished, its recommendations and its work, you really saw DHS kind of taking steps to already offload FEMA responsibilities to states and cut its workforce. Well, under Mullen, it seems to be sort of a focus on stabilizing the workforce. They, for instance, have reinstated 14 people who were suspended since last September for signing a public letter challenging some of the changes at FEMA under the Trump administration and under former Secretary Noem. They reinstated those folks. They've also offered new jobs to FEMA workers who are in the cadre of on-call response and recovery employees or core staff. There was about 190 of those who lost their jobs in January. Just this past month, they were offered new appointments because you can clearly see FEMA leaders saying, look, we need to make sure that we have a stable workforce going into this disaster season. We can't afford to lose many more folks.
Justin, what does FEMA's readiness for this hurricane season look like from the outside?
Well, it looks a little bit better than last year. Last year, the Government Accountability Office reported that FEMA had just about 12% of its incident management force available at the start of hurricane season. Fenton spoke to CBS News a couple weeks ago and said that FEMA now has about 30% of its disaster workforce ready right now, and he said between 30 and 40% is normal availability. Now, that is a smaller disaster workforce than in previous years because of all of those departures. And so FEMA, while the percentage of its disaster workforce is higher from a ready-to-go type perspective right now, that overall workforce is smaller and will continue to be smaller even with some of this hiring that's going on just because of all the departures that have happened.
And what are you watching right now for the future of FEMA more broadly?
Well, I mentioned the FEMA Review Council issued its final report back in May, and we'll see how those recommendations start to get implemented in terms of offloading some responsibilities to state and local governments, in terms of reforming FEMA programs and how those work, and streamlining grants to states and things like that. A lot of that, though, will require input from Congress, and it'll be interesting to see if Congress moves forward with efforts like the FEMA Act this session. Congress doesn't normally do a whole lot in an election year. This would be a pretty big bill to pass. While it has passed to the full House, it hasn't been picked up at this point. There isn't a firm path forward for that. And so it'll be interesting to see if the House does do anything with it, especially if disaster season starts to get a little complicated. If, hurricanes hit, that's the other big thing that we're watching, and that's something that nobody can predict. What is Mother Nature going to do? Will this be a much more busier hurricane season than last year, which was a very quiet, abnormally quiet hurricane season in the Atlantic? And so that's something that everybody is watching right now as June hits.
That's Federal News Network's Justin Doubleday. Justin, thanks for bringing us up to date.
Thanks, Terry.
You can find his full story at federalnewsnetwork.com.